Hello, everyone, and welcome to FAM Sports Varsity Section 1B Quarterfinals Preview. And I want to welcome everyone to my next video. My name is Frank Langella. I am going to be the only host here for this Class 1B football breakdown. And, Class B is a very interesting spot for Section 1 because you had a Byram Hills and Pearl River come down this year, and Ardsley, who won the championship last year, coming back as a heavy favorite. And it was kind of a two-man race right from the get-go. You saw two of the top teams in Ardsley and Byram Hills separate themselves from the group. But then you have a lot of parity on the bottom half of the Section 1 Class B grouping. And we're going to dive into each one of the quarterfinals games, give the matchups, talk about each team a little bit, and then at the end, predict the winners and those who are going to the semifinals. And I want to welcome everyone to this video. This is our first year covering Section 1 football. I've been a coach in Section 1 football for a while. I've been in the area for a while. If you guys want to follow us on our Twitter handle, you can follow us at FamSportsVF, and that is the varsity account. We also have a Facebook page, FamSports New York. So you can follow either one of our social media accounts. We like to post a lot of content and just break down everything in Section 1 football. So let's dive right into it. And the first game I want to go into is number 8, the 8th seed Putnam Valley, 2-5, at number 1 Ardsley, who is 6-0. And, I mentioned Ardsley has been a very impressive team. Putt Valley, they started 0-4, and they won 2 of their last 3 games to qualify for the playoffs. Even though Putt Valley was in, Putt Valley had a very good year last year, and even when they started off slow, they made a run in the playoffs. And can they repeat that magic that they did last year? But Ardsley did beat Putnam Valley September 20th, 21-7 in what was a competitive game. Putt Valley actually surprised Ardsley a little bit, but Ardsley has won 6 straight versus Putnam Valley, so history is on Ardsley's side. Obviously, Ardsley is a very talented team. But let's start with Putnam Valley. They've struggled offensively this year. They only average 9.6 points a game, which is 9th in Class 1B. What they run in, they come out in a lot of ace slots. They like to motion their wings. They like to do some sweeps, do some options, run with the quarterback, stuff like that. And it's kind of been a struggle this year. They have good size up front on the offensive line. One running back that I think they rely on is Kieran McNamara. A talented junior running back. He had some success last week against Albertus Magnus. But it's really going to start all up front, right? I mentioned the O-line. They have some solid size up front. They're going up against a very good defensive front on Ardsley. They're going to need to play well for Putt Valley to move the ball consistently since they've struggled all year long. And a really talented player that they need to find a way to get the ball in space. Joe Trophy, the senior wide receiver, a talented playmaker on both sides of the ball. It's important for Putt Valley to get the ball in his hands. I know it's been a struggle this year, but he is a talented player. I think opening up the field, having a couple big plays from him would really change this game. Defensively, they gave up 22.9 points a game, which is 7th, so definitely better than what their offense has been. They also had a shutout last week. So defensively, again, we'll get into Ardsley's weapons shortly, including their one big one, but defensively they need to try to keep the score down. If this gets a couple touchdowns, separate the team, I don't think Putt Valley has the offense to match Ardsley. And now let's move to Ardsley. Offensively, they're very explosive. 30.5 points a game is first in Class 1B. They've had 3 games of 35 or more points. They really know how to run the ball. And the guy who really carries that load is Jalen Osborne, the senior. He's a really special running back. 815 yards rushing, 13 touchdowns. He's really a playmaker, and there are times where the Ardsley has felt a little stagnant on offense, and Jalen has broken the game open because of how talented he is as a runner. Um, they're also very good on the offensive line, big, strong. We can go through a whole bunch of people: Liberis, Fawn, Roberts. Um, they're just big. They're big and strong, and in Class 1B, you have a big, strong line. You can change the line of scrimmage. You have a really good chance of being successful. But it's going to be interesting if Ardsley wants to try to repeat. They're going to need plays from their quarterback, Luke Martini, who is a talented player as well. 573 yards passing, 4 passing touchdowns. They're going to have to be consistent in the passing game if they really want to repeat as champions. But they looked the part offensively and defensively, giving up only 10.8 points a game. That is first in Class 1B, and it starts up front, like I mentioned. They have one of the best D linemen in Section 1 in Liberis. Fawn is a very talented player as well. They move the line of scrimmage very easily, and it's just because of that front that it really makes everyone around them better. So it's a real uphill battle for Putt Valley. Ardsley, if they play their game, they should have some success. But Putt Valley is a tough team. They've played Ardsley tough before. It'd be interesting to see how Putt Valley is going to maneuver enough offense against a very tough defense in Ardsley. Let's go to the next game. We got number 7 seed Bronxville, who's 4-3, and number 2 Byram Hills, who's 5-1. No one can just explain the turnaround. It's hard to explain the turnaround from Bronxville. The coaching staff and the kids deserve a lot of credit this year. They were 0-8 last year in 2018, and they haven't had an above 500 record since 2014. All right, so if they get one more win, they finally get over that hurdle. They had a big win last week against Woodlands, pretty easily. Byram Hills beat Pleasantville in what was a tough game, but Byram Hills was coming off a bye. So we'll see. They didn't meet this year, so it's hard to tell, exactly how these two teams match up. But if you study and, go into and study the teams and study their season, this is a very interesting matchup. And let's start with Bronxville. Offensively, they score about 23.6 points a game, which is 6th in the league out of 9 teams. So, not a great, they don't put up a whole bunch of points, but still good enough. And it all starts with their quarterback, Henry Donahue, who's one of my favorite players in the league. Plays quarterback and linebacker, which you don't really see that often anymore in Section 1, where kids playing quarterback and playing the toughest position on defense where there's a lot of contact. Just shows you how tough that kid is. He's 5'11", 195 pounds, built really well. But he really runs the show for Bronxville, and you could tell that by his production. 690 yards passing, 6 passing touchdowns, but also 671 yards rushing and 9 rushing touchdowns. So obviously there's a lot on his kid's plate. Anyone who plays against them is going to be looking to take away Henry, or at least slow him down. So it's really important for Bronxville to get him going. It's also really important for Byram Hills to slow down this quarterback, who can beat you both with his arms and his legs. Another running back to keep in mind, though, Connor Randall, the 5'9", 160-pound running back, junior kid, 329 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns. He's another piece that may help alleviate some of the pressure on Henry. It's going to be important that Bronxville finds someone else. Not that Henry can't do it, but they got to get some production from other people, which is really important. Defensively from Bronxville is the part that I really like about this team, and I think that's what's going to make it a tough game for Byram Hills. They only give up 12.7 points a game, which is second in 1B. 4 games this year they have allowed less than 10 points, that's pretty darn good. Bronxville rallies to the ball. They're tough at multiple levels. They're a good tackling team, which is important for defense. And they're a defense that's hard to get yards on. And they just grind. You really have to earn everything against Bronxville, which is why I like them, They're going to be a tough 7 seed to beat because of that defense. Good defenses keep you in games. If we move to Byram Hills, before the season, I chose Ardsley versus Byram Hills in the title game. Byram Hills has a lot of talent as well, although they have a lot of young guys. There are still some upperclassmen that have helped lead the way, even though Byram Hills has suffered injuries. Offensively, 28.8 points a game, which is third in the league. They've scored 28 or more points in 4 out of 6 games. And they're led the way by their quarterback, Nick Pica. He uses both his arms and his legs. He's a dual threat guy. He's not afraid to run. He obviously likes to throw. He's going to be very important for this Byram Hills team, especially, they got to make some plays in the passing game. Another person to watch out for now, they've had some injuries at the running back position. Michael Rocco, who's a young running back who has filled in that spot. He's someone to keep an eye on, to change things up, to get someone else carries, but I think Pica is going to have a huge hand in how far Byram Hills goes. But also up front, I think Byram Hills is very stout, which is one of the reasons why I liked them preseason. I liked Ardsley, obviously, and Byram Hills is because both of them have solid big men up front on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. And Byram Hills led the way by by Nick Ferrante. He's a big man. He's a big, strong offensive lineman who really changes the line of scrimmage. 6'4", 285 pounds. Just a beast up front. Defensively, 14.3 points a game. Byram Hill started off, defense was really rolling, but they've kind of taken a step back. The last 2 games, they've given up 45 points the last 2 games combined, which kind of worries me a little bit, but I'm thinking they're going to turn things around. They have the players to do it. One of the linebackers that I like is Ryan Abate Marco. A playmaker. He does a lot of good things. He moves around really well. He's got a nose for the football. There's a bunch of other players on Byram Hills that I do like, but Byram Hills versus Bronxville, it's really going to come down to a couple things. For Bronxville, where can they garner the offense outside of Henry? Can they get Henry going? And if not, who else will make plays offensively? Defensively, they got to play their games. They got to just prevent big plays, rally to the ball, continue to tackle well. They've shown to be a stout unit all season. For Byram Hills, they are, in my opinion, the better team. So can they just play up to the level that they're supposed to? Can they get led by their upperclassmen to take them farther into the playoffs and just use that offensive line? The offensive line is big and strong. They can move people. They got a few guys on both sides of the ball. So on the offensive line, can you move people? On the defensive line, can you get to Henry? So that's going to be the important part in this game. Let's go to the next one. Number 6, Pleasantville, 3-4 at number 3, Pearl River, who is 4-3. Pleasantville lost 28-21 to Byram Hills last week, like I mentioned before. Pearl River, who was dealing with a tragic loss of one of their teammates, lost to Nanuet in their rivalry game. But Pearl River did beat Pleasantville 34-13 a couple weeks ago. And so this is an interesting dynamic. You have Pleasantville, who has been a prominent team in Class 1B. They have a very good coaching staff. They have a really tough team, and they have toughness that you've seen throughout many years in Pleasantville. But Pearl River, who has come down this year, they also have a pretty solid team, but how they're dealing with this tragedy is tough to tell. It is. They have a very good coach, and Pearl River has tried to keep them focused. It's tough. It's tough to put a finger on how they deal with this situation. But let's dive into Pleasantville. Offensively, 19.1 points a game, which is 7th. So we've seen Pleasantville struggle to move the ball offensively consistently. But they do have one of the best skill guys in the class, and that's Jared Williams. He is a talented receiver, 6'2", 170-pound senior, who's really lightning fast. I mean, he can once the ball's in his hands, he really can bust open a game. 408 yards receiving, 7 TDs. Pleasantville should be looking to get the ball to him as early and often as possible, especially when they tend to struggle moving the ball. You want to get your ball into your best playmakers' hands, and that's one of them. Another person to keep an eye on is running back Harrison Hellsworth. Short kid, 5'6", 165 pounds. He is a tough, feisty little guy. And me being a short guy, I love myself some short, feisty players. 479 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns. He's really carried a decent load on his shoulders and performed pretty well. Defensively, Pleasantville, 18.6 points a game, 6th. They've given up at least 20 or more points in 4 straight games, which is not a great number, right? So Pleasantville started off really well defensively, but they've hit kind of a roadblock. 4 straight games, 20 plus points. You're not heading in the right direction, but I do like them up front. I think they match up well with Pearl River up front. They have some size up front. They got that, they have a grit about them, which I really like, especially in playoff time. But let's get to Pearl River, right? Pearl River coming in, I think they are a more talented team, but there is obviously a lot of emotions going on. Offensively, 23.7 points a game, which is 4th in the league. They've had 2 40-plus point games, which is very impressive. They're led by a couple of their skilled players, and one of them is my favorite. He was one of Frank's finest, number 81, wide receiver, Logan Flaherty. He's a playmaker on both sides of the ball. He kind of was a utility guy for them last year, where he's a stat stuffer. I mean, he had stats all over the place, but on the offensive end, he's a really talented guy. He's a good route runner. He makes plays. He doesn't look physically overbearing, but he just finds a way to make things happen. And even on the defensive end, he made a lot of plays as well. I know he had an injury early in the season, but another important thing is to get this player involved. He can really change games. Another one, he's kind of that scat back slot receiver. Matt Villaboy, he's also someone who's made a lot of plays. Not a big guy, but he really is like a Julian Edelman type player, if you were going to refer something to the NFL, where he runs good routes, he makes some plays. Defensively for Pearl River, 17.3 points a game, which is 5th. So you can see they're kind of an even matchup. I mean, Pearl River obviously has a more stout offense. But defensively, they're pretty much very similar. And it'd be interesting to see how Pearl River, bounces back from a tough loss last week. Pleasantville, they find ways to grind games out. I know that their defense has struggled, but they do have a very good coaching staff, in my opinion. And they're going to have them ready. So the real big thing is who can score points enough. Pleasantville has shown that they've struggled at times. Pearl River has been a little up and down, so we shall see. Finally, let's go to our last game. And this one, is another interesting matchup. The fifth seed Nanuet, 4-3 at the 4 seed Westlake, who is also 4-3. They did not meet this year, and these two teams, their history has been really interesting. They're 5-5 between them, and the last time they played was in 2018, where Nanuet won. So they have split the series 5-5. For Nanuet, what they do really well is they have a very good offense. 29 points a game, which is 2nd in the league. They've had 30-plus points, 30 or more points in 4 of their 7 games. So they know how to put up points. They're led the way by their running back, Justin Haughton, senior running back, 692 yards rushing, 18 touchdowns. I mean, that's crazy. 18 touchdowns. I mean, you can get like 3 running backs on a team that can't get 18. This guy has carried the load for Nanuet. They like to get this kid the ball early and often, and they're just begging you to try to stop him. He also can receive the ball too, 242 yards receiving and a touchdown through the air. Again, Nanuet is going to feed him the ball. There's no doubt about that. It's, can Westlake slow him down? Can they stop him? Nanuet also has some size up front too, which helps open up lanes for Justin. Defensively, Nanuet, this is where the issue comes. They struggle, right? 24.9 points a game. That's 8th in the league. Definitely the worst among the playoff teams. You know, they 2 weeks ago they given up 3 points. You know, last week they given up a good amount of points, but they try to outshoot you. You know, they want to score points. They want to move up and down the field, and sometimes the defense can't match that intensity. If we go to Westlake, you know, Westlake's had an up and down year. They're another team that's been very prominent in Class 1B over the years, and they have a toughness and grit about them as well. Reminds you a lot of Pleasantville. Offensively, 19.6 points a game, which is 6th. 2 running backs that stand out to me, you know, Nick Martinez and Sardo, the 2 running backs for Westlake. You know, they have not big running backs, but they got some toughness to them. They're shifty. They make guys miss well in open field. So those 2 guys if you're really looking to watch Westlake to make an impact offensively. Defensively, I like them. You know, Westlake, again, I mentioned toughness. That's the word that I hear when you're watching Westlake. Okay, you can see the toughness on tape. 14.7 points a game, which is 4th in the league. A pretty solid number. Can they slow down Justin of Nanuet? Can they slow down that running attack? That's going to be the big question. If they can even slow Justin down, if they can just prevent Nanuet from scoring 30, I think Nanuet's going to have a really good. Westlake's going to have a really good chance to pull this victory out. Same thing with Nanuet. I mean, shootouts are great. They want to run up and down the field on you. But the defense is going to have to slow down Westlake. Now, Westlake's offense has sometimes shown they can't really move the ball well. So this is going to be interesting. Does Nanuet's defense step up, or does Westlake's offense step up? And that's what I'm really looking forward in this matchup. All right, so finally, let's get to our game picks. We're going to pick Class B. You know, before the season started, my Final Four was Ardsley, Byram Hills, Nanuet, and Albertus Magnus. Obviously, I was very wrong about Albertus, but I'm going to tell you what, I have to stick with my gut. I have 3 of my 4 could make it to the next round, and that's who I'm going with, 3 out of the 4. So starting off first, I'm taking Ardsley over Putnam Valley. Ardsley has more talent all the way up and down the roster. I think this game will not be very close. I think Ardsley, who, you know, played a tough game versus Putt Valley, and Putt Valley deserves a lot of credit, but I think Ardsley steps up this time. The game is more of a blowout. Byram Hills versus Bronxville. This is the more interesting matchup for me. I think this one's closer for a while, but Byram Hills does pull it out. Pleasantville at Pearl River, and I'm taking the upset. I'm taking Pleasantville. This one's I went back and forth with a lot. I think Pearl River is more talented. I just don't know where they are focus-wise doing this tough tragedy. I think Pleasantville has a really good, they have a real toughness to them. Both teams tough between Pearl River and Pleasantville. This is really a coin toss to me, but I just think Pleasantville makes a couple more plays and they pull off the upset. I'm also taking Nanuet over Westlake. I love Nanuet's offense. The defense does concern me a little bit, but I think Nanuet makes enough plays. I think Westlake struggles to move the ball, which will help Nanuet's struggling defense. But I don't think Westlake can stop Nanuet's offense. So I think Nanuet makes enough plays. All right, that was our video. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Make sure you guys follow us at FAM Sports VF to get all your Section 1 football news and breakdowns. I hope you guys really enjoy the games this weekend, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.